All right, good morning, everyone. Team Echo, you will have 20 minutes to present your solution to the judges. You will be given a warning when 5 and 2 minutes remain. After 20 minutes, the presentation will be stopped immediately, and no information will be considered after the time has lapsed. Following your presentation, there will be 10 minutes of question and answer. You will be given a warning when 2 minutes remain, and the question and answer will be stopped after 10 minutes. You may begin when you're ready.
So anything that moves and anything that spins, that's something that you've identified as kind of being one of your company mottos. Everything that you do is all around us, whether that be automobile motors, marine motors, things like that. Everything you do is all around us. And we've identified a few very unique situations that you happen to be in at your organization. So we've identified this as your key concern to get things started. How can Nidec Motor Corporation capitalize on its strength, experience, and expertise to leverage IoT in a way that creates strategic advantage? We at Ready Consulting have done the work for you, so no need to worry. I'm Colin Ritter. That's Sarah, Rachel, and Matt. Before we get started, we want to give you a brief roadmap as to how we get started. We know you're an innovative company and you're paving the way for the future, so we're going to pave the way for you. We're going to start with an external analysis, then an internal analysis of your situation. From there, we're going to move into a financial analysis and then identify key success factors and what we believe will be the best way to achieve our goals. We'll then present you with alternatives, a solution based on those alternatives, our implementation plan as to how we plan to go about implementing that solution, a contingency plan to make sure that anything that may come up will be mitigated, and then after all, we'll conclude with our solution. We're going to begin with our external analysis.
So looking at the external environment directly outside, the macro environment, the remote environment, that basically the big picture that we are operating within. So two of those important things we saw out of this environment is technological. So the industry of things, or Internet of Things, global trends, and manufacturing applications. So Industry 4.0, trends in automation and data exchange, estimated 30 billion objects will be part of the Internet of Things industry by 2020. Also in legal, so the European General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, is becoming enforceable within the next 2 months about. So we don't have a lot of time to really prepare for that. So data laws differ from country to country, and within the US, even from state to state and region to region. So moving in a little bit closer into the industry environment, some of the most important things we saw is that rivalry is very high. There's fierce competition within the motor industry. We identified buyer power as being low because it's not heavily dependent in any specific client. Moving in even closer to the environment directly outside the company, the micro environment. So our customers, we are primarily B2B. Our competitors are mainly General Electric Company and several others. However, we do have a lot of different competitors because we do operate within so many different industries. So the key takeaway from this external environment analysis is that while the current industry is heavily competitive, there is potential to grow within IoT industry segments. So looking a little bit closer into our customer segmentation. So our direct customers that we actually sell our products to is original equipment manufacturers, or OEMs, and then also service providers. And sometimes these also happen to be the same because people who manufacture products also tend to provide services for those as well. The indirect customers, or basically the person who ends up with our actual product and uses it, is businesses buying the equipment and services from our direct customers. So what we do with our direct customers also tends to have an effect on their customers as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Now we're going to take a look at the external factors of the SWOT analysis. We're going to begin by looking at the opportunities. As you can see, we have quite a few, the most important being that there is a growing interest in predictive maintenance and monitoring. However, as you can see, there's a lot more threats than opportunities. Important ones too, such as like the service industry, as you mentioned in the case, may not welcome the industry Internet of Things solutions that you are offering nowadays. There's also that potential for direct competition with your primary customer, as Rachel mentioned. And also the technological changes that may cause in the future for what you're selling right now to become obsolete. So that's something that we should be looking at. Now we're going to look at the internal factors. As you can see, you're doing pretty well because we only put one weakness over there, but it's an important weakness. Internet of Things is a new thing for you guys, so you guys are not used to dealing with that. But as you can see, we have quite a lot more strengths over there, being the most important one being that you are the world's leading manufacturer of motor and controls. You have the Foresight technology, which is incredible. It has great potential. And you also have strong operating performances, especially in the past 9 months. Bringing those two analyses together, as you can see, we have more strengths and threats. In cases where you have more strengths and threats, it calls for a diversification strategy. What does that mean? It means that we must redeploy our strong resources and competencies to build long-term opportunities in more prospective markets. Now we're going to be measuring your resource advantages. The resource being, of course, Foresight. The way that we're going to measure it is we're going to look whether or not your product is valuable, which it is, as you can see. If it's rare, which it is as well. The one thing that it isn't, it is actually very easy to be imitated. So that is something that we should be looking at. And also, the organization could be exploiting it in a better way, which means that your competitive implications, you have a temporary competitive advantage. What does that mean? It means that we must leverage that temporary competitive advantage from Foresight while aiming for continuous innovation with it. Now, Matt is going to talk to you about your current financial situation.
So the good news is you guys are doing really well. Your net sales had a positive change of 27%, and your operating profit also had a positive change of 19.7%. And you surpassing, the key takeaway for this is you're surpassing the industry averages right now. And so we have to leverage our financial stability to create strategic advantages. And Colin will go.
Thank you so much, Maddie. So now we're going to talk about the takeaway points from all these analysis we just showed you for our main analysis. So while the current industry is heavily competitive, there is potential to grow within the IoT industry. We must redeploy our strong resources and competencies to build long-term opportunities in more prospective markets. We must leverage a temporary competitive advantage for Foresight while aiming for continuous innovation in IIoT. And finally, our current financial situation shows figures that surpass the average figures in the industry, but we must leverage our financial stability to create strategic advantages and continue to grow. It's something you had mentioned you were obviously wanting to do as an organization. So our key success factors, we have identified two main problems and two things that we are going to address and our solution will fix. So first being the positioning of Foresight. These are things that you obviously helped identify as well. So our key success factors in that, customer relationships, we have to maintain those and make those better. Competitive advantage, we want to make people know that your product is the best and this is the one they need. And third and finally, supply chain efficiency. Moving on to the second concern, managing data and compliance. Our first solution, our first key success factor rather, global strategy. Something you identified. How do we manage this on a global scale? Second, data utilization. How are we going to effectively use this data for our organization? And third, security, privacy, and ownership of data. We have to make sure that we're taking these large amounts of big data and keeping them safe and making sure they're in the right hands and never put in the wrong hands. So from there, we're going to talk about the different alternatives that we've placed for you.
Thanks, Colin. Okay, so we're going to look at first at the alternatives about positioning Foresight. The first alternative that we saw was focusing on the indirect customer. What does that mean? It means that we are allowing end users full access of the Foresight interface, which is pretty much what we're doing right now. As you can see, there's a few pros over there, being it that it's a larger customer base than just a direct consumer. However, as you can see, there's more cons than pros. One of them, the most important one, being direct competition with your own sales channel. The second alternative that we're going to look at now is the opposite. We're going to focus on the direct customers. We're going to be removing Foresight access from the end users or your indirect customers. As you can see, another pro over there is that the positive customer relationships with service providers. This is something that you said that you wanted to work on. However, as you can see, there's quite a few more cons over there. One of it being that it does not meet indirect customers' expectations for real-time data at lower cost. So the problem that you have here is that you have two customer segmentations that you have to make to, please, but it's not quite working. We looked at a third alternative as far as that, which is expanding the Foresight development, which means we're going to have a specific platform for the service providers, which is your direct consumer, which is going to have quite a lot more information than the platform that the end user is going to have, which means this idea would please both of them. As you can see, we have one con over there, which is we have to address the end users who already have full access to Foresight. Since they already saw it, it's going to be difficult for us to take that away from them. But as you can see, there's quite a few pros over there. It avoids direct competition with your own sales channels, as we previously mentioned. This is something that you are really worried about. Also, it meets expectations of both customer segmentations and helps direct customers maintain their revenue streams. Now, Rachel's going to be talking to you about the quantitative analysis.
So after taking a qualitative approach, obviously we want to kind of put this in terms of numbers to really judge which decision would be the best. So we took our different alternatives and we put those up against our different key success factors that we identified for this particular challenge. We also weighted these, given them relative weights and with relative importance to each other. So we judged that customer relationships, maintaining a good relationship with your direct customers is the most important, so we gave it a higher weight, whereas competitive advantage and supply chain efficiency ranked a little bit lower. However, these are all important, it's just relative to each other, some of them just tend to have a little bit more weight than others. So we ranked these all on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being does not meet the criteria at all, 5 being effectively meets the criteria. So as you can see, focusing on the indirect customer meets pretty much 0 on supply chain efficiency because it's kind of having a contradiction when you're competing with your direct customer because technically, as a supplier, you want your customer to be doing financially well. So kind of dwindling their revenue streams would actually do you harm more than good. So it's kind of almost cannibalism in itself. Focus on direct customer has really high ranking for customer relationships because you are meeting the needs of your direct customer. However, it ranks a little bit lower on supply chain efficiency just because you're really not meeting the needs of their customers, which once again, that's one of the revenue streams. So expanding the product portfolio to really incorporate the needs of both customer bases ranks extremely high on all 3 categories. For competitive advantage especially, basically there's a lot of innovation with that because you are meeting the needs of them, which we were contradicting before, but you're also adhering to the needs of their customers as well. So we're not only offering a value proposition in our product, but we're also, a part of our value proposition is actually enhancing theirs for their customers. So as you can see, expanding product portfolio ranks way higher than the other ones. So that will be the decision that we go with moving forward.
So as you can see, the solution for our first challenge is expand Foresight development, specific platforms, service providers to manage service plans with end users. It addresses the 3 key concerns in this fashion. It improves relationships with direct customers by not directly competing with them while offering a supplement that will improve the revenue streams. Secondly, it creates competitive advantage through innovation and new value propositions. And thirdly, it facilitates supply chain efficiency due to positive impact on route-based monitoring and end user expectations. Now we're going to go into the alternatives for the second challenge.
Thanks, Colin. All right, so how do we manage your data compliance? The first alternative that we thought about was a centralized data hub in the United States. As you can see, there's a pro of the low-cost maintenance, but you can see there's a few cons over there, the inability to provide real-time data to remote regions. You are all over the place, however, latency issues would be a big part of that, and the poor data utilization. A second alternative that we looked at was a multi-data center strategy, which we would deploy data centers all over the place where we are right now. The pros would be the proximity to the regulatory environment. However, as you can see, there's more cons as well, such as the unnecessary management costs and overhead. The third alternative that we thought about was the acquisition of SwiftStack. SwiftStack is a cloud-based data solutions to facilitate future IoT endeavors and compliance. How would that help you? First of all, there is a con, which is the cost of acquisition. That is an important con right there. However, a few pros. It would accelerate the incorporation of IoT into your manufacturing. It would give you access to specific knowledge. Like I said, IoT is not really your core competence, so they could help you with that. And it will also expand your business portfolio as well as helping you with the whole compliance issue. Rachel's gonna give you a quantitative analysis again.
So once again, we took the different alternatives, put those up against the key success factors. This time we ranked global strategies actually being the most important out of these 3, just because since we are pretty much located all over the world, we do need to have a very important strategy that can deal with a bunch of different types of regulatory environments because there are so many different factors, and a lot of them are changing all the time. So as you can see, the centralized data hub pretty much ranks 0 on the global strategy because we are located everywhere. In some locations, if there's data moving in towards that location, it can't exactly move anywhere else. So if we don't have a location in those particular areas, then we wouldn't be able to do business there at all. So we do have to have some data hubs, at least some in the ones that are required to be there. Multi-data center strategy, this actually, it seems like it might be a good idea, but since data isn't really confined to geographical regions and it can be accessed all over the globe, it's actually kind of just unnecessary. Whereas acquisition of IT SwiftStack Incorporated, they already pretty much know what they're doing. They rank really high on global strategy, data utilization, and security and data ownership because they've already been doing these things before. These are all the things that we kind of struggle with because we just started doing them, and taking on their expertise and their knowledge would actually totally accelerate us into something that this is one of our main goals. So as you can see, once again, the acquisition of IT SwiftStack Incorporated ranks much higher than the other alternatives. So this will be the one for the second challenge.
Thank you much, Rachel. So, as she mentioned, the solution for Challenge 2, acquisition of SwiftStack Incorporated, cloud-based data solutions to facilitate future IoT endeavors and compliance. It improves global strategy by bringing in expertise in data security and compliance. It improves efficiency and utilization of data and data-centric approaches. And it addresses data security and ownership issues by implementing best industry practices. So I know what you're thinking. This is a lot. We've talked about the why. Now we're going to talk about the how. This is the most exciting part for us because it doesn't matter why if we're not going to tell you how we're going to do it. So let's moving into SwiftStack. You're probably thinking, what in the world is SwiftStack? We could have just said, you know what, we're going to acquire a tech company, a cloud-based computing company that works on data, but we didn't want to do that. We want to do the research and give you the best solution. So we went with SwiftStack. It provides needed knowledge and tools to successfully implement data storage solutions. It addresses upcoming compliance issues in the EU, the GDPR situation that you're currently facing, and it streamlines existing storage processes to ensure best use of sensitive information. And I know you may be thinking, but how is this thinking global? Well, the people who have built SwiftStack all come from different geocentric regions all over the world. They've worked to develop a system that works in different regulatory environments to deal with compliance. This is something they specialize in. So we have to talk about R&D. Rachel's going to go ahead and mention a few things about this.
So the R&D plan, what is the first step? Obviously, we talked about working on our existing technology. So updates to existing products. Obviously, we want to further develop our Internet of Things approach. So machine-to-machine communication is something that is becoming a trend. This will facilitate more efficient service routes and cost savings. So instead of having kind of like redundant routes and checking everything, the machines communicating with each other would also help to facilitate a more efficient route. And then ability to schedule its own appointments. So not necessarily make its own appointments, but kind of send messages to an appointment scheduling system instead of an actor actually having to look at the program and then schedule an appointment. So for the new Foresight version for service providers, it would include limited end user application interface, and then the service provider platform to streamline maintenance processes. So basically, the service provider would actually have most of the data that the end user now actually has right now. Instead of taking everything away from them, because we feel like that would kind of be unfair, they did express a want to have real-time data. So they want to know what's going on with their stuff. However, the service providers don't want them to know everything because that kind of defeats the purpose of their job. So if we make sure that the service providers still have a purpose while giving the end user some peace of mind on the quality of their equipment and the state of being, then I think it would meet both purposes. And then also long-term or IoT innovation, devices should be used in quality control, resource optimization for high customer attractiveness and high vendor readiness in both of these.
Thank you, Rachel. And we're going to go a step further and even develop an app for you, not only for the mid-users, but the end users as well. We're going to develop an application for end users that provides limited and simple real-time data to the consumer so they don't feel like they're being pulled out of the system. We're going to still provide them with that information that they had before. Secondly, we're going to develop the application that utilizes data collection, analyzes, and can schedule preventative service checks autonomously. Services notified via push notifications. And thirdly, allows for end users to schedule service checks upon their discretion in addition to autonomous features. Moving into marketing, we're going to build value in IoT consumerism by building value in collaboration. This is a very hot topic. People want IoT products. I mean, think of the Nest for your thermostat. Think of the Amazon Alexa. You're doing that for the industrial level. Place, app-based, easy, and fast remote access and user-friendly interfaces. Price, based off pricing structure of service providers, subscription-based service contracts with end users, a flat monthly rate so they don't have to worry about charges, things along that lines. And promotion, we're going to utilize word of mouth within B2B community, i.e. showcasing expos, things you're already doing. We're going to continue to further that to make sure we're getting the best word out for your organization. We're going to briefly touch on financials.
So financial plan is going to be about $500,000 US to update your Foresight digital interface. And then to acquire SwiftStack, it'll be about $24 million US. And we're gonna do this through debt, and we're gonna follow our current trend of mass acquisitions, which is what your company likes to do. And then 24 million is very small compared to you guys acquired Emerson for $1.2 billion. So this is negligible, and it'll help solve your data privacy problem and data management problem.
Thank you so much. So a brief rundown of the implementation timeline. As you can see, we have R&D, HR, operations, distribution, marketing. And as you can see here, this is the timeline in which we believe all these things will be developed. But don't worry, we have milestone reviews, as you can see, that are notated here by stars. This means we're going to be with you the entire time. So if something comes up, we have a feedback loop. We're going to reevaluate the process and make sure that you're getting the best service from us at Ready Consulting.
In our financial forecast, so we're forecasting about a 32.5% growth in sales revenue. So by 2020, that puts you at over 2 trillion yen in sales revenue.
Your time's
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
So SwiftStack, are they exclusively IoT, or do they have servers for other applications?
They have servers for other applications. They're primarily a data-centric model as far as storing data and securing data.
Okay.
Yeah, so it could operate on anything, essentially, but it could be specifically tailored to the IoT solutions that you're seeking specifically.
I also have a question on the SwiftStack. Are they actually currently for sale?
They're not currently for sale, but we believe that with a competitive offer, they're not currently listed on the market or anything like that, but we believe with a competitive offer, they would more than likely, there's reason to believe they would be more than happy to comply with what you would be able to put forward, because not only is it helping them, or not only helping you, but it's helping them grow. As they were a relatively small company, about 40 to 60 employees, but a very large global footprint given the size. A lot of upward trajectory as far as their growth is predicted. So we believe it would do a service to both and not just
Was there any thought put into a redundancy plan potentially if they decided not to sell to Nidec?
Yes, so essentially, would you like me to take this one or anybody else?
You go ahead.
Essentially, another avenue that we looked at was like a mitigation to the fact that maybe they didn't want to be bought out and we couldn't acquire them. We could simply hire the IT individuals that could manage this data and secure this data. We just thought that this was the best solution for you because it comes kind of like wrapped with a bow on top. We have people who are professionals in every single aspect of this as far as data solutions, data security, privacy, compliance. So we thought this would be the best solution. But if it didn't happen, the mitigation would be to single-handedly hire people individually to handle that. While yes, it may be cheaper at first, this would serve you better in the long run because, as mentioned via your question, they do service other areas as well as opposed to just IoT.
That word redundancy just triggered something. I didn't hear anything about like a hot backup site that in case of a system outage, that might be something you want to look at. A little confusion in terminology between indirect customers and end users. Now, I understand with this business model, there really is a big distinction between direct customers and indirect customers. In my experience, I've had a lot of experience in this kind of thing. We always refer to the end user as the end user. You can kind of switch back and forth between the two, but I think anybody who's sophisticated enough to understand this, the indirect users are the same as the end users. I see the biggest out-of-the-rest issue as taking something away from the end users. Basically, they're going to lose access to their data. They're going to lose control of immediate control. Anytime you do that, you're going to have pushback, serious pushback. I didn't hear anything addressing that until like Rachel finally got around to it. But I think you need to devote a little more attention to that because in the real world, you're going to have a rebellion on your hands when you say, "Oh, by the way, we're going to have to realize one of the wonderful things for you, but to begin with, you're going to lose all the control you have today." Nobody likes to hear that. That's a really tough message to get across. It's a tough sell. That's going to be a really tough sell. So you got to. I think you just need to improve a little bit on how you sell that to the end user. How you're going to make that. How you're going to put a positive spin on it and convince them to get on board. We had a lot of pushback, I'm sure.
So yes, we did identify as that being a significant risk actually, because of course if you give somebody something and they love it, and then you try to take it away, it's going to hurt a little bit. And even though they're not our customers, like I said before, that hurts our direct customers because they're their customers. So basically the contingency for that, to prevent that, is basically to kind of sell it as a benefit to them. So instead of saying, okay, you have this huge analytics thing to look at, do you really even know exactly how to use it the most effectively? Whereas like you're spending so much of your own time and money dealing with this, whereas this could be in the hands of a service provider, whereas you still have data that's actually relevant to you and that you can actually use, versus something that's a little bit more complex that people who are actually more used to dealing with maintenance could actually address.
Let's take this problem over for you and free you up to do other,
Yes.
pay attention to other more important
While
things.
still kind of allowing them to almost feel like they have that power because they're still getting that real-time display via the application that we're going to develop. So while yes, we're kind of taking it off their hands, they still really feel like they're in control. And as long as they feel like they're in control, I feel like the end consumer will still be satisfied.
One thing I thought you did very well, I used to be an attorney, I'm retired, but you did what we call a good opening statement at the beginning of the case. You always try to outline the high points for the jury, where you're going to go, and then of course in the course of the trial, you cover them. And you did a really good opening statement, kind of giving the roadmap of what you're going to cover, so we knew what to expect. And I thought that's a good tactic to use.
I definitely agree with that. The opening was very good. You can tell you guys did your research on our company and took time to learn about Foresight, so good job.
Everybody had a tendency to speak really fast. I know it's a very limited time. You just might want to polish that up a little bit, have a little theater training might be helpful. Your words kind of run
Yeah.
into each other, but I know you're trying to compress a lot of information into a very short period of time. In the real world, you probably have a little more time to plan it out and have a better paced delivery. Or always face the audience too. Several of you face the chart, and be talking to the chart, and it's harder, especially for us older guys. It's always good to be facing so we can see your lips and your voice is pointed right at us.
So one of the challenges that I know we're facing, going back to the data ownership, is even if we sell to, say, a service provider, they don't necessarily want us to have that information, or the end user definitely doesn't want us to have the information. Mainly, I guess I should say, our direct customers don't want us to have that information. So a challenge we're facing, I know, is how can we collaborate with our customers to ensure that we maintain access to the Foresight data that's being gathered, because currently there's no rules or regulations in the US that's preventing us from having that access.
Yeah.
But eventually, as these things become more, mainstream, our customers aren't going to want us to know what's going on with their pumps or with our motors specifically, because technically they're theirs now, right?
Yeah.
But for us, it's a huge potential advantage to be able to get insight into how our equipment's behaving in the application, because US Motors has been around for 100 years now, and we've never been able to have that kind of data collection. We get service calls. We have a product services group that goes out and looks at the application, but we're not able to go in and see exactly what's going on real time, where we could provide insight. And NEDAC doesn't want to take on, at this stage, being responsible for monitoring the data, but we want access to the data. So how would you guys approach that with our direct customers, say an OEM? How could we approach them and to try and get a benefit for both of us?
So for your direct customer to allow you to access the data is in their benefit. If he did not do that and his machine ended up breaking because there was nobody monitoring aside from himself, and sometimes the reason why we made two different interfaces is because your direct consumer may not be well prepared to read the type of data that is over there and actually understand it. So what's going on here is if think about it, 50 years from now, when you think about manufacturing, you're going to think about IoT. It's going to be all over the place. It's all going to be all automated. So if anything, I think you have more chances of more people wanting to give you their private information than want to take it away from you, because they're not gaining from that.
Good. To add to what she's saying, I think this relies completely on our positioning strategy, in the sense that we're relying on the fact that we're saying, while yes, we do kind of have this information, we see what's going on with your equipment, but the only reason we have that, it can be framed in this way, is because we're providing a service in a sense. Like, we're going to help you. If we see something that's wrong and maybe you don't catch it, we can make sure that we schedule appropriate maintenance checks, service checks to make sure that your issues are being solved for. Kind of one of those things. So it's kind of like almost like even a weighted scale. So we're providing benefit to you by allowing us to have that information while still giving them full availability. And the way SwiftStack operates independently is the way they have that access to the past data is almost very much like it's cloud-based storage. So the way you would access a Drive account for like Google Drive or something like that is the way they would access that. So just a historical log of what has happened over time.
Maybe I missed it. I don't recall hearing much about data security. Anytime, there's a lot of people not experienced in the IT world, you hear the word cloud, and they go, oh, my data's out there in the cloud, anybody can get to it. What would you say to somebody that is asking, what are you doing with all this data, and how do you protect my data from, say, falling into the hands of one of my competitors? The end user would have a major problem with that.
So to that, I would say, that's exactly why we're going with SwiftStack, because that's what they focus on. Not only are they a data storage solution, but they're a data storage solution that focuses on security.
Your time's up. Thank you, team.
Thank you. You good? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great vision. Thank you so much. Great,
Thank you.
great graphics.
Thank you so much. Thank you.